Hello, it's Declan Costelli here, editor of ENT and Audiology News, and I'm joined today by Professor Carl Philpott, who is one of the UK's foremost rhinologists and has been very active over a number of years and has just recently had a publication in the Lancet following a major trial looking at antibiotics and nasal surgery, sinus surgery. So welcome, Carl. It's lovely to chat to you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yes, thank you very much for the invitation to chat.
No, pleasure. The reason I wanted to talk to you is that it's not very often that major ENT trials make their way into huge international journals. The macro trial really struck me. Tell me about the genesis for the idea for the study.
Yeah, well, it goes back a long way, really. I think goes back to probably sort of early 2011, 2012 time. And I'd originally drafted an application to the NIHR for a trial for macrolide therapy, comparing clarithromycin versus placebo in a group of patients with chronic rhinosinusitis without nasal polyposis, because we felt that was an important research question to address. At the same time, Claire Hopkins was submitting a proposal on a surgical trial for patients with nasal polyps present. And both of us got the same rejection on the basis that they didn't think the disease was an important topic. And that sort of was difficult because obviously there was no comeback on change the methodology or, recruit different people to the team. None of that. It was just, we don't think it's important. So it was really then a case of, making a case for the condition and why it was important to manage. And so after some deliberation and with the arrival in the UK of Anne Schilder at UCL, we sort of cobbled together a team for the macro program, and we started drafting, I think, that in 2014. And obviously, with these program grants, they're normally a two-stage process. So we applied for the two-stage process, and we were delighted to find out in the middle of 2016 that we were awarded the grant. And to our surprise, actually, they asked us at that point to increase the size of the trial they wanted us to deliver. We'd actually applied for a trial of 360 patients, and they said, we want you to do double that to make sure that you're powered for the subgroups. And we went away and thought about it a bit and said, okay, we'll revise our sample size a bit and we'll agree on 600. And that was predicated on having a 50-50 split of patients with and without nasal polyps.
Right. And so by we, you mean you and Claire Hopkins and Anne Schilder, is that right? The three of you. And it's
Well, that's right. Yes. I mean, Valerie Lund was part of the team, so she was an important supporter. We recruited primary care expertise in the form of Paul Little and Mike Thomas at Southampton, colleagues in health economics at UCL, so Stephen Morris originally, and then Caroline Clark.
And so it's interesting that the trial initially, or the condition initially, wasn't felt by NIHR to be important enough to study, but actually so it sounded like a combination of Claire's trial and your trial seemed actually to give them the idea that this really was worth studying. Is that right?
I think because in the context of a program grant, what you can do is set the scene a bit more, and so you can kind of make a case for why you want to do the trial, and therefore set the trial in that context. So the first bit of work we did in the program grant was health informatics work, so looking at general practice data, CPRD data, looking at HES data from secondary care, doing some health economic modelling, interviewing patients and also clinicians. So we are qualitative researchers, interviewed ENT colleagues and also GPs to get their views on how it was managed at the time. And so all that then comes together to kind of scene set. And then we had a big meeting to decide on the trial design after that.
Okay. And in terms of the challenges of conducting the trial itself, what did you find there?
Oh, wow. I mean, there's a story in itself. So, to start with, we started with 6 pilot sites, and that was okay. We got going, and then we expanded to, I think, initially up to sort of 15 recruitment sites around the UK. And then, of course, 2020 dawned on us, and the pandemic arrived, and inevitably we couldn't see any of our patients face to face. So we lost a lot of our follow-up visits for that cohort patients that were in the trial at the time. Obviously, some of those didn't get their operations because their operations were cancelled. And then it took quite a bit of time, obviously, to get up to speed again. And then just as we got back up to speed, there was a second lockdown. So that took things a bit further. Fortunately, NIHR, after applying to them for an extension, granted us an extension for a 0.6 million to be able to extend the trial by an extra 2 years.
Right.
So that made a big difference. The biggest problem then, of course, when we came back after the pandemic was that many of the research nurses at sites had been reallocated or moved on to other roles. So we were looking at different teams. Referral pathways had changed. Some colleagues were finding it difficult to get patients referred into them. Some colleagues were finding it difficult to get into the operating theatre to do cases. So there was a myriad of things.
Yeah.
And then if that wasn't enough, we then had a drug supply issue at one point. The factory guys, I think, had a problem. We then changed to oil-free, and they had in a summer heat wave, had a computer meltdown, and all their computers burnt out or something.
Yeah.
so,
Wow. And it
so
just
that was another challenge.
with all these things, when challenges happen, and it sounds like you've had more than your fair share of challenges. It's been going on for a long time, but it seems to me that one person is often the sort of driver of this and making sure that the whole thing carries on and the train stays on the rails, as it were. Was that you in this case?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was obviously, we were leading that sort of process through the trial management group meetings, and you just have to keep everyone to task, absolutely, and equal kudos to the rest of the team as well as part of that, and particularly Claire.
The pandemic must have absolutely made your heart sink when everything fell apart and there were no operations being done and everything became that much more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nightmare, wasn't it? Really, I think a nightmare for in many ways, and particularly I think for us as a specialty where we're sticking things in the nose, and that was the most potent source of the virus.
Yeah. And when it came to the actual process of submitting it, I mean, first of all, how did you decide on the Lancet, and second of all, what were the challenges with submitting to a journal like that?
So we talked about it for quite a bit in our sort of trial management group meetings, which journal to go for. And I think we always felt that we should target the Lancet as our first port of call. And then our backup plan was to try the BMJ, and then possibly the New England Journal of Medicine as alternative options. We'd obviously seen what had happened with some of our colleagues' trials, such as Natina and Neros. And I think Natina got into Lancet, but Neros didn't. And I'd had a conversation with James Zahara because he had sort of, the scars from going through a Lancet sort of review process. So we kind of thought, well, let's do it. Let's try it and see what happens. And I actually contacted the editor directly and sort of said, would they consider a fast track application? He said no, but we'll take it through a routine application. So I thought, great, they're interested. And so we submitted it, and then 2 months later we got a sort of an email back saying accepted subject to revisions, and I was amazed, really. I mean, it's there was a lot of stuff in the revisions, but it was all stuff that we could contend with.
Yeah.
Actually, what was interesting was the most challenging bit was the post acceptance bit, the editorial process.
Right.
They actually sort of almost dismantled the paper and sort of rebuilt it.
Wow. What do you mean in terms of the
minutiae they went
or how it was presented, or what?
Yeah, it's just a lot of it was just sort of wording and how stuff was presented and clarifications, but it was such a level of minutiae in there that I was. That felt actually more rigorous than the review process itself.
Oh,
I think the Lancet's obviously got a very specific sort of format they want to adhere to.
Okay. Oh, right. All right. Yeah. Gosh. Well, yeah. Again, congratulations. It's it's great. It must be a relief to have it sort of off your desk, as it were, and you can move on to the next things. Speaking of the next things, I mean, what's next for you in terms of rhinology?
Well, I mean, there's still ongoing work with the macro trial in terms of we're doing 5-year follow-up with participants who have agreed to do that, and so we've got an RFPB grant that funds us till the end of 2028 to follow up all the remaining participants that have agreed to that. So that's one bit of work. We're hoping to do a network meta-analysis of all treatments that are currently available for chronic rhinosinusitis, and we're waiting for an outcome of that for a grant we've submitted. We are looking to redo a separate trial on macrolides for the non-type 2 chronic rhinosinusitis patients, because the trial didn't really. The trial sort of really told us that for polyp patients, or specifically for type 2 inflammatory patients, macrolides don't work. But
Right.
we have a sense that there is a group of patients still within that we haven't answered the question for, and so that's what we want to
Okay.
uncover.
Okay. And I mean, the landscape of rhinology is changing quite a lot, and the biologics in particular have the potential to really quite radically alter what we do in the longer term. How do you see that playing out in the next 10 or 15 years?
Yeah, I think it's an important time. I think at the moment, obviously, the biologics are difficult for us to access as ENT folk, but I'm sure that's going to change radically in the next
Yeah.
few years, particularly as licenses come to an end, costs come down, and a
Mm,
lot of biosimilars are coming onto the market. I think looking at the hurdles that will be in place in the shorter term will be that patients will have had to have had an operation on their sinuses before they can qualify for
right.
biologics.
I see.
So I think
Okay.
that'll be that's certainly the hurdle that we anticipate NICE will recommend.
Okay.
And if you look at the trial data, there was about 3% of our patients in the surgical arm who were still really badly affected even after the operation. And
Okay.
that is a group of patients I think that we should be focusing on for biologics in the first instance.
Right. No, fair enough. Fair enough. In terms of other advances in rhinology tech or medical treatments, what's the landscape at the moment?
It's a good question. I mean, I think obviously, there's a lot of adjuncts in surgical terms now in terms of drug-eluting stents, and there's I think a position paper going to be due out on that in due course. Um, I think obviously the role of surgery in conjunction with biologics is a question we don't fully know the answer to yet, and that's
Yeah.
probably something that will require more analysis
Yeah.
and real world data coming in as well from countries that are already providing that service.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm sure there'll be new biologic developments that we haven't yet thought about coming along.
No, sure. I mean, outside of your sort of clinical and research work, you're involved with a number of charities, particularly the smell charities. Tell me about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, our charity Smell Taste, which was formerly known as Fifth Sense, I helped found in 2012 when I was approached by Duncan Boak, and he'd read a book called Seasons to Taste by Molly Birnbaum, and she was an American author that suffered a head injury, lost her sense of smell as a consequence, and was a trainee chef at the time, so it impacted her career progression.
Yeah, yeah,
And she wrote a great piece on the lay aspect of the topic. But in it, she went to see some well-known people in the US, including Richard Doty, and also referenced Thomas Hummel's work on smell training. Anyway, Duncan read this book and felt it was a bit of a eureka moment for him because he'd really been neglecting the issue to that point. And he contacted Thomas Hummel, and Thomas said, "Well, if you want to talk to someone in the UK about smell, go to see Carl."
right.
And so we met in 2012, and shortly after that, we agreed to set up our first patient or PPI type meeting where we invited people who are affected by smell loss to come to our meeting at the St Andrews Halls in Norwich.
Yeah,
We had some food specially prepared by an ex-MasterChef contestant,
right.
and we had a number of stands and just encouraged people to come and talk about it. And I think it was amazing as a kind of moment in time where people came in and they kind of realised that they weren't the only one with a smell problem, and actually there were lots of people out there that were like them, and that was really, I guess, the foundation of it. And from there, we managed to get registered as a charity officially, I think, in about 2018. And Duncan's now taken over as the CEO of the charity, and I currently have the co-chair of the board of trustees.
Right. And fast forward 2 years from 2018, and the need for people having support in terms of smell, loss of sense of smell was huge. I can imagine the charity was completely swamped when it came to the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a very interesting time, a so surreal time looking back at it, really. But yeah, I mean, it was there was an overwhelming kind of need for stuff, really, and I don't know, not sure that we necessarily were able to provide all the support that perhaps would have been liked by the general populace. But certainly, the website provided information and provided a resource for people. So
Yeah.
I hope that we can still see some positives come out of that period in terms of recognizing that there's still problems out there in terms of olfactory dysfunction related to that pandemic.
Yeah, it's true, and I'm sure, as awful as the pandemic was, I think it's highlighted a number of areas that perhaps were relatively under recognized previously. Smell being one, the role of aerosol transmission that I was involved in to a certain extent during the pandemic, that being another one about transmission of disease generally, where very little research had been done before. So it has
Yeah.
brought into light a number of things. Listen, we'll wrap up in a second, Carl. Tell me about sort of other things outside medicine. You're involved in a number of sports. Tell me about those.
Well, yeah, keen cyclist. I mean, I've done the ride across Britain twice now for my sins.
So you've done the what?
Ride across Britain.
Oh, ride across Britain. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Fantastic.
the last effort I did for that was last September last year in 2024,
Right.
and on that occasion I rode for Alzheimer's Society. So yeah, it's. I mean, I think I need to find maybe some different cycling challenges, but yeah, it's an enjoyable way to kind of exercise and relax, see something of the countryside, and I do enjoy being able to. I mean, whenever we go on holiday now, we always hire a bike and go off for a morning and do some cycling because it's just a nice way to see different places and take in the scenery.
Yeah, fantastic. And you were telling me about tennis as well. You're involved in tennis?
Yeah, so last year I qualified as a referee with the Lawn Tennis Association. So I'm a member of the Norfolk LTA committee and as a parent rep. And I stuck my hand up in a meeting one day and said there aren't enough tournaments for the children to play in.
Right.
And they said, well, that's because we don't have enough referees. So you need to go away and train to be a referee.
You're in the firing line. Brilliant. You shouldn't have put your hand up, Carl.
So, yeah, that's right. So sure enough, I did the course, and yeah, so I was refereeing on Sunday actually. So
Oh, brilliant.
yeah, it's and I think with my boys, well, one's off at university, the other one's about to go in next September. So
Right.
it'll be a transition to being tennis ref from tennis parent.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. Oh, well, you've got plenty going on, Carl. We'll wrap up there. I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you very much. Good luck with future endeavours, and I hope, I hope to see more from the macro trial in due course.
Okay, so thank you.
Cheers.